Well, climate is not the only issue that we have presented to us. Problem, that is. The United Nations, and just to be, it's a very long title, so I'm just going to read it. The Intergovernmental Policy Platform of Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. This UN office essentially issued a report. This report is somewhat of a damning condemnation of the planet, not in the sense of climate, even though there's an intersection between the two, but from the standpoint of biodiversity. They were commissioned to look at the world's biodiversity. It's almost like a world report card, or you can say even a world health lesson. And we are not a healthy lot. I hate doing stories like this. Like, I've gotten to the point where I stories on environmental stuff to me is kind of like stories on mass shootings, if that makes sense. Not for the exact reason that you may think either. It's yes, I don't necessarily want to see people shot. By the same token, what I get annoyed about is that nothing happens. It's like you have this tragedy, this catastrophe that takes place. You have all of these people lives that are affected by this particular catastrophe. Person walks in, multiple lives are extinguished within the blink of an eye or within a period of time, but multiple lives are extinguished by somebody that is either not wrapped tight or enduring some kind of mental stuff that has detrimentally impacted numerous families. And there's outrage. And then you get outraged and you come on your show and you shake and move and you show how pissed off you are about this thing that has happened in your society. And it keep happening over and over and over again. And at a certain point, there is no more outrage to be had. It's certainly your society knows that people who are impoverished have somewhat emotional issues that are associated with impoverishment. And I don't mean emotional issues, I mean mental issues in this case. Meaning it's stress. And some people act in particular ways with stress. We know that if you awash a country in guns, that there's going to be some probability of people, even if everybody in that country is wrapped tight, there's going to be a probability of people that are off. And you've washed your country in guns. We know that there's going to be a higher probability of people being potentially shot. Like, we have two political parties that, when dealing with this, both said send prayers. Not because it was in the best interest of the country. One party is fully on board with the NRA, meaning in this kind of the Second Amendment part. This becomes a political touchstone for them. Meaning the reality of events gets drowned out by the ideology of events. And the Democratic Party, terrified that this is going to somehow hurt their campaigning, turns around and says send prayers. So yeah, I look at this issue for the shootings and I have no feelings about it. It just kind of looks at it as if the country is okay with it, then the country is okay with it. This is what the country wants. Climate change issues feel similar to me, even though this is one of those things that I actually care about a lot. Nevertheless, there seems to be movement on this. Whereas the gun issue seems to be somewhat of a vacuum, this issue does seem to get some level of traction. In the UK, you have people pushing extremely hard, getting so far to get the government to issue this kind of statement of climate emergency. And even in this report, with all of these scientists, 450 researchers who used 15,000 scientific and governmental reports, and all of them had to be approved by every last one of the nations, including the United States, the nation that's headed by somebody who says climate change doesn't exist, despite the report saying the temperature is going to hit 100 degrees, despite the report like 10 degrees or 5 degrees within the course of 100 years. And it's not even 100 years anymore. But you get my point, that we're going to see magnificent degree hikes. But the guy says it doesn't exist. Even that country had to sign off on this. And when that representative was asked, she said, we're in trouble. Even the representative from the United States agrees we're in trouble. I'm trying to get somebody to come onto the show, a scientist, discuss this that's a little bit more competent than I am on this. But just to get the basics of what these guys are reporting, it is somewhat of a damning report. Let's flip over. Conservation scientists from around the world convened in Paris to issue a report which exceeded 1,000 pages The Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services included more than 450 researchers who used 15,000 scientific and governmental reports. The report summary had to be approved by representatives of all 109 nations. We're indeed threatening the potential food security, water security, human health, and social fabric of humanity, Watson told the Associated Press. Watson was one of the people who was in charge of the report. Let me flip over to this one. The biomass of wild animals have fallen 82%. Natural ecosystems have lost about half of the area, and million species are at risk of extinction, all largely as a result of human actions, said the study, compiled over 3 years by more than 450 scientists and diplomats. 2 in 5 amphibian species are at risk of extinction, as are 1 1/3 of reef-forming corals and close to 1/3 of marine species. The picture for insects, which are crucial to plant pollination, is less clear, but conservative estimates suggest at least 1 in 10 are threatened with extinction, and in some regions, populations have crashed. In economic terms, the losses are jaw-dropping. So, right here, the knock on humankind, including freshwater shortages and climate instability, are already ominous and will worsen without drastic remedial action, the authors said. The healthy ecosystem on which we and other species depend is deteriorating more rapidly than ever. We are eroding the very foundations of economies, livelihoods, food security, health, and quality of life worldwide, said Robert Watson. That was the gentleman that I quoted before, the chair of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystems Services. We have lost time. We must act now. I'm skeptical that there will be action. There was, in fact, let me couch that. Just as, are we shocked? I mean, this is kind of the mass shooting thing, right? Are we shocked by this? We have an economic system, our world, not just economic system, is based on cash, profit, capitalistic system, capitalism, individual liberty in this case, in the sense of a large wallet. Profit's not real. It's a thought thing. It's not real. Your world is. You are literally a ball hurling through space, hurling through the cosmos. That's real. The ground to which you exist, that's real. Other human beings, that's real. Cash is not. You've based a real world on unreal things. Are we really shocked that this is the outcome? All of these issues, all of these things that these guys are talking about, the biomass, everything else, all of that is from the way we've organized our affairs on this planet, this notion of maximizing profit at pretty much any expense. And from the standpoint of a corporation that's job is to maximize its profit, all of the stuff are just negative externalities. These are things that the public has to deal with, not the corporation that was responsible for these behaviors. The only way this changes is for a radical change in the way that we organize our affairs. Part of that is recognizing that there is a certain degree of sustainability that is required if we want to maintain our habitable space on this planet, which is a real thing. And insofar as that real thing suffers, what this report is telling us is that we also will suffer. Like I said, I hate these reports because for the most part, it's telling us something that we already, for the most part, know. I would try to get a scientist. Let me see if Guy McPherson is available to come on. Because, they joked McPherson. They laughed at him. They said he didn't know what he was talking about. And yet, one report after the next that come out shows, to some degree, that maybe he wasn't perfect because he's a human being, but he was damn sure in the right direction. And the question becomes, what do you do about it? Like, it's one thing to say something about it, meaning the climate report that the UN gave, this hair-on-fire report, and then this report coming out on biodiversity, where there's an intersection in climate. And the question becomes, Okay, what do you do about it? Especially when you're talking about multiple nations that are involved in this process. Multiple nations, mind you, that have a vested interest in maximizing their profit. And not just maximizing their profit, nations that are up and coming. Meaning, it's one thing to have a developed nation. Undeveloped nations should also have an ability or have just as much right to expand and to modernize just like the other nations. Are you going to tell them that they can't do it because the chemicals that they're using are adversely affecting the climate and environment, and then it's fair that they're not able to do it? I guess this question gets, this is a fascinating question and somewhat of a puzzle. But dealing with that puzzle at the very least acknowledges that the way we've organized our affairs, meaning it's not a bug, it's a feature. That this pretending as if cash is a real thing and everybody else or everything else is subordinate to it. Nevertheless, UN. Once again, the UN. So I will end this here. I don't want to keep this long. Oh, and by the way, Donald Trump may have pulled out of the Paris Accord, but I hate to tell you this, the Paris Accord doesn't necessarily solve your problem. The Paris Accord could have been signed by the United States and it wouldn't have done one iota of difference to what these guys are talking about in this report. And I'd even argue the climate report. Oh my God, we're going to hit the rock at 100 miles per hour instead of the 60 or 70 with Clinton. Okay. Thanks all. If you guys enjoy the content, please consider supporting PayPal or Patreon. I'll see you guys in a few.